Let's start with Texas.
Let's start with Texas. Texas went 13-3 a year ago. Their over-under is 9.5 this season. Looking back to what happened in 2024, they lost twice to Georgia, once in the regular season, once in that SEC title game. Almost lost to Arizona State in the playoffs. It was a great game.
Yeah.
And then eventually did lose to Ohio State in the semifinals, but did have it down 4th and goal with like 4 minutes left to tie the game. That was the big moment that maybe we shouldn't talk about, since we know we have Texas fans that are listening and watching this episode. That's the Jack Sawyer play, right? The strip sack, takes the fumble the other way, goes up 28-14. That was all she wrote.
Yeah. What were your bigger picture takeaways from the 2024 season at Texas's first in the SEC?
Obviously acquitted themselves quite well. Would have been nice to get over that Georgia hump.
Yeah.
But didn't feel like Texas was overmatched or anything like that, joining a new conference. I don't know if we expected that. But clearly they acquitted themselves quite well.
Yeah.
I think secondly, beyond that, getting to the college football playoff, getting to within a few plays maybe of the eventual national championship game, if things had worked out a little bit differently, speaks volumes about what Sark is building in Austin, the depth that they have of talent, clearly the high-level talent that they have that's able to push the whole operation forward. I think that was very encouraging. And I think my biggest takeaway in doing the research now, planning for 2025, is holy cow, this program's got a lot of steam on it.
Definitely.
There's a lot of momentum here, and there are some rough edges maybe that we can talk through. But again, much like we talk about with Georgia, with Ohio State, with Alabama to some extent, we're splitting hairs if we're really trying to dig down and find what we think is quote unquote wrong with these teams. The wrongs for these kinds of teams generally are things that 130 other schools out there would pay to have.
Sure, of course.
So Texas is in a great place coming into 2025, and I think if you're a fan of the Horns, you're hoping that they build on that momentum from last season.
Yeah, to me, within the context of it being an excellent season, you're right, there were some rough edges. You know, there weren't always games where they were throwing their weight around like you thought they might, and maybe some of that is Quinn Ewers injury stuff. You know, the Arkansas game, the A&M game, they scored 17 points. I thought there's a case to be made that this was the best defense in the country last year and has a chance to be even better this year, given, you know, Anthony Hill, Colin, Simmons, the edge. You know, there's just a lot to like about where the Texas defense is and brings back this year. But you're right. And we talked about this a little bit, that right now the issue for Texas is the distance. And that's the distance between 4-1, 3-1, 2-1, whatever that may be, because we saw just a narrow gap between Texas and Washington the year before in the 4-team playoff, a narrow gap between Ohio State. This was definitely the defense in the playoff that did the best job of handling Ohio State. And they were obviously right there. And so now the question is, are the pieces there to once again replicate what they did in 2024 defensively? And what type of new ceiling, lower, higher, whatever, does the offense have after last year? Again, affected by injuries, running back, quarterback, whatever you want to call it. And now with new pieces, both returning and transferring in, what does Texas look like on both sides of the ball now that we are into 2 straight years, is what I'm trying to say, of making the college football playoff top 4. Fascinating, fascinating story.
Can Arch Manning live up to the Manning hype?
Sure, he can.
Can he do it while navigating one of the tougher road schedules in the country? I think that's the big question for me on the tip of my tongue. That's right on the that's like the headline for me with Texas.
Okay, you can't separate the season from the schedule. Yeah.
What's Arch Manning going to provide here? And will he live up to that billing? We've been waiting for this for a while. I'm excited we finally get to see him as a full-time starter. Beyond him, this is an elite roster. It's an elite roster, but there is some inexperience out there. Offensive line, I think you got some questions. I do have some questions about the receiving core. Defensive line has a little bit of turnover as well. Again, as I said here at the top of this, splitting hairs when it comes to Texas. I think we trust in the depth. We trust in Kyle Flood to put out an offensive line. We trust on some level in the Manning name. We trust in some level of just in general with what they've got.
We don't need to trust the Manning name. We've seen him play college football.
Sure. Not a lot, but
right.
I think what we've seen has been pretty encouraging. So, look, Texas is going to be fine. Texas is going to be in a fantastic place going into this season, but it is a difficult road schedule. At Ohio State to open the year. That's a pretty big one. That is the big one.
Right.
To open up the college football season. At Florida, October the 4th. Florida coming off a bye, by the way. At Georgia, November the 15th. And then it's maybe not a true road game, but they're away from home October the 11th, 1 week after that Florida game when they square off against Oklahoma in the Red River game. So Arch is going to have his work cut out for him. I think what I am most excited to see is how Sark incorporates some of his mobility into this offense. I think it gives it a new dynamic, especially in some of those situations where you need a few hard yards, which is something that to an extent plagued them a little bit last season. Our friend, Brett Ciancia from Pick 6 called this out in his preview, and he was specifically talking about Texas in the red zone.
Yep.
And how this season he is looking for some maybe like more zone read stuff, which is not what they had in the arsenal last season.
Mm-hmm.
So curious to see how they use Arch just in that capacity, if he's able to elevate them otherwise. Let's zero in, though, on the offensive line for a second, because the offensive line has to replace 4 starters. I think how quickly they gel is going to determine, A, can they protect Arch? And B, can they get as much out of the ground game as it did last season? The ground game last year with Trey Wisner and C.J. Baxter, I guess, before he got hurt. Jaden Ballou. The ground game was, I think, very unheralded, but did a great job. Great job in moving this offense forward.
Yeah. So
can they do that again? Can they get to the next level with this? I think is going to be a fascinating question.
Yep. No, to me, I think the offensive line is going to be fine. It's new guys at a number of spots, but this wasn't a perfect offensive line all of the time last year. And so I think the standard is pretty high. They've recruited very well. I think Brandon Baker is probably going to start on the right side, a Southern California dude who committed a couple years ago. They took a hit yesterday with, I think, a rotation guy who was competing for the right tackle spot. He's out for the year. I think they'll be fine. I think Sark is good enough at scheming, and they've recruited at receiver well enough. They're deep at running back. If Arch, is locked in and good with the playbook and confident in the pocket and will have to be right away, first game at Ohio State, I think there's a pretty significant ceiling of national championship winner for this Texas team. They're number 1 in the coaches poll, right? That came out yesterday as
Correct.
we record this on August 5th.
Correct.
So obviously expectations externally are pretty huge for Texas. And what will be fascinating to me is you're talking about the offensive line. It's not to be all like sports radio or First Take. Is like,
who will step up in this Texas receiver room?
I think the loss of Gunnar Helm may actually be one of the bigger things because Texas is looking to be better in the red zone. Gunnar Helm was as sure a thing in the passing game and in the running game as Texas had. And then losing Matthew Golden, obviously, to the NFL. I am not worried that somebody will step up for this Texas receiving room, in this Texas receiving room. Just curious as to how young that person is. There's a lot of tantalizing youth for Texas here, and they went to the portal for a new, what's Jack Endries from Cal.
I like Jack Endries a lot from Cal.
Yeah.
I think he has a chance to really excel in this system. And but it is a question outside of like Ryan Wingo.
Yeah.
What does it look like? There are some new names. I mean, they did really, really well in the recruiting game as well to bring in new talent there. So I'm not worried that they're not going to have talent. It's just a matter of seeing who gels with the offense, who meshes with the offense, I think is the operative question, and how they work furthermore with Arch Manning.
They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 losable games on this schedule. Now, those 5 teams are potentially or likely more terrified of Texas than Texas is of them.
I was going to say, I look at Texas, to me, they're better on paper than everyone on the schedule. The game at Georgia on November 15th, that looms pretty large, but just from a roster on paper standpoint, Texas is better than every team on this thing.
At Ohio State, at Florida, neutral Oklahoma, at Georgia, and then a rivalry game against A&M, of course, to finish things out, I think, on a short week. At home, though. Those are all losable games in that each of those teams does something well enough, we think, is the perception that they could on any given Saturday or their specific given Saturday beat Texas. So it's a tough road. It's absolutely a tough road. I don't think there's any way they go through unscathed. Doesn't mean they're not winning the national championship, so either. But
yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, you and I talked through in part one, we both have Texas playing for the SEC title. I've got Alabama winning it. You've got Texas winning it.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get to Alabama next. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough road. I could see them dropping one along the way. I don't know where it's going to come from, but clearly the road games, I think, are where you go first if you're trying to find those. I like the defense a lot. I think they are stacked across the board on defense.
We'll see on defensive tackle. We'll see what they look like down in the trenches. Yeah.
Do have some questions along the defensive line, but provided they can work out some of the line questions that I have, I think it sets up Arch Manning really well. I think they'll find their receivers. I think they can get Trey Wisner going again in the running game. I think this will be clearly one of the 5 best teams in the country.
Yeah.
Full stop. This isn't rocket science, right? You don't need the PhD. They've got all the talent that they need in order to excel. I think they're going to be great again.
They also have Colin Simmons, who fully files under the, like, Mark Jackson, there goes that man. Like, if Colin Simmons is unstoppable and the Pete Kwiatkowski defense, which has deep safeties and, you know, wants you to take shots downfield as they close in on interceptions and passes defended, whatever, if Texas is able to get home, like we think they should be able to up front, because there's going to be so much gravity and attention on Colin Simmons, that there should be opportunities elsewhere, whether it's Trey Moore on the other side or one of the new defensive tackles. They're going to keep teams to 13 points every week. That's just the reality.
Colin Simmons had 8.5 sacks as a true freshman last season. And you mentioned Anthony Hill Jr. before. Anthony Hill, 113 tackles, 17 of which went for loss. He also had 8 sacks and 4 forced fumbles.
Machine.
As a sophomore.
Yeah.
So not only are they incredible, they're also young. Don't forget about Michael Taft back at safety as well. They're adding 5-star and top 50 recruits. I mean, they're just stacking these guys on top of one another.
Yeah.
So certainly the back seven is, I think, among the, if not the best in the country. We have some questions about both of the lines, but again, probably splitting hairs here. We'll see what Arch can do with this.
Yep.
Arch is going to have every opportunity to lead this team to an SEC title, into the college football playoffs, maybe play for a national championship as well.
Yeah. Nobody has more pressure on them this season than Arch Manning.
I think we got to go over 9.5, though. I don't see more than 2 losses on this thing.
I'm thinking 10-2. Yeah. 10-2,
11-1,
11-1.
10-2.
And I have them winning the SEC, but it's just a gauntlet. It's a road gauntlet. That's just the terrifying thing. They're going to get everybody's best shot. They're Texas.
9-3 would be something of a disaster with this roster.
10-2, 11-1 is the zone I think they're in.